Not everyone who comes back deserves to be welcomed. In life, there are relationships that leave behind pain, but also teach us the deepest lessons. You once loved, once trusted, once gave your all to hold on to someone with a charming appearance, sweet words, but a hollow and controlling soul. And when you realized you were slowly losing yourself, you chose to walk away. You chose silence. And that was when the healing began. You thought that by simply cutting contact, by no longer thinking about them, everything would quietly fade into the past. But then, one day they suddenly returned. A call, a message that seemed harmless. "How have you been lately?" "I happened to hear our old song, it made me think of you." In that moment you might feel confused, because somewhere inside you, the memories haven't quite gone to sleep. But pause. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, are they coming back out of love or because they can't accept that you're doing fine without them? When a narcissist reaches out after a long period of silence, it's not a sign of regret. It's a test to see how far you've grown. Are you still vulnerable to sweet words? Or have you become strong enough to face the truth? This isn't just a phone call. It's a chance for you to confirm that you are no longer the same person, the one who once forgave, once hoped, once waited. Now, you are someone who knows your worth, and you have the right to choose to continue your journey of freedom or to return to a familiar cycle of pain. When a narcissist initiates contact again after a long period of silence, the first thing you must understand is this: their motivation doesn't come from love, it comes from a desire to regain control. They may have realized that the supply that once made them feel important to you is no longer there. No more long messages, no more tears, no more moments of self-blame as you tried to hold on to someone who was never really present. And that confuses them. They're not used to being ignored. They can't stand the feeling of being replaced. So they come back not to love, but to test if you'll still react. They send a soft, seemingly harmless message. No apology, no mention of the pain they caused. They simply drift back into your life as if nothing ever happened. And that's the trap. If you respond even with just an emoji, a polite message, you've reopened the door that took you so much strength to close. Then slowly they'll creep back in with sad stories, wistful what-ifs, and promises they will never keep. You'll find yourself back in that familiar cycle: hope, disappointment, trust, betrayal. But this time you have another choice. You can choose not to respond. No need to be polite. No need to explain. You've stepped off that stage. You don't need to prove you're okay. Your silence and your steadiness are the clearest answers. I'm not here anymore. You are no longer someone who's easily swayed by a message that says, "I miss you." You are someone strong enough to know that a real relationship does not restart with emotional tests, it begins with honesty and consistent action. You might ask yourself, if they truly needed me, wouldn't they have changed? That's a very human, very honest thought. But let's be real, real change doesn't come through a few rushed messages. It doesn't happen after months of silence followed by a sudden "I miss you" thrown out like a lifeline. Change is a process, one that requires time, commitment, accountability, and above all, inner awakening. A narcissist doesn't come back because they've awakened, they come back because they're empty. They need someone to fill the void. And if you once did that well, you'll be their first pick. Not because you're precious, but because you were once easy to control. They're not returning for your heart, they're returning to see if you're still as soft as before. Watch closely. They won't ask how you're really feeling. They won't apologize for the sleepless nights, the heartbreak, or the loss of trust they caused. They'll just drop by with vague sentiments, just enough to stir confusion in you. That's not care, that's a test. A test to see if you're still emotionally vulnerable. A test to see if you still need them. And this is when you must remember, your silence is your strength. Not reacting doesn't mean you're cold, it means you've grown. You no longer need noise to prove anything. You don't have to reply just to close things with grace. You don't have to say "I wish you well" to look generous. You don't have to be polite in a game that once shredded your self-worth. Politeness with someone who once manipulated you is a trap, because they'll twist that very politeness to pull at your emotions one more time. And if you're wondering what if they really have changed, this is the moment you need to be more clear-headed than ever. One of the most cunning tactics of a narcissist is pretending they've changed, not because they truly want to make amends, but because they can't stand the fact that you're living well without them. They know your soft spots, your compassion, your patience, your belief in second chances. They know you once forgave, and they'll use that very forgiveness as the key to knock on your heart one more time. But instead of taking real action, they choose to perform. At first, they'll talk a lot about emotions. I've done a lot of thinking. I realize I was wrong. But when you gently ask, what exactly were you wrong about? They'll deflect or give vague responses. They won't focus on how they hurt you. They'll emphasize how much pain they're in. This is your first sign. They're not taking true responsibility. They're just trying to stir your compassion. Then they'll suddenly seem very self-aware. They'll say they've been reading books, going to therapy, discovering themselves. In the first few weeks, they'll be sweet, humble, even unusually patient, as if they're a completely new person. But you know what happens next. Once you begin to let your guard down and start to believe maybe this time is different, they'll slowly return to their old patterns: criticism, manipulation, neglect. Real change doesn't come that quickly, and it never comes from the fear of losing control, but from true inner awakening. You'll also notice they create pressure with time. We've already wasted too much time. I can't stand being without you. They rush to get back together, not allowing you the space to feel, to reflect, to choose from clarity. Real love doesn't rush. Only the fear of losing power makes someone move that fast. And if you're still not convinced, they'll shift into victim mode. They'll say they're depressed, they can't sleep, no one understands them like you do. They make you feel responsible for their pain. But remember, you are not obligated to heal anyone, especially not the one who once broke you. In the end, you'll see it clearly. They only change when you leave. Not because they want to be better, but because they need a way back in to reclaim control. And once you're back, they no longer need to pretend. Everything returns to how it was, or worse. So don't let loneliness or old memories confuse you between a performance and true transformation. They may have picked up a few phrases from books, a few tactics from social media, but they cannot learn how to truly love you, if what they're after is still power. And if you realize all of this, if you can see clearly that they're only performing, only using the mask of "I've changed" to stir old wounds inside you, then the real question becomes, what should you do? This is the moment you must return to the core principle of healing. Don't act from emotion, act from awareness. First, pause. Don't rush to reply. Don't rush to react. They are waiting for you to let your guard down, hoping for any sign of softening. But your silence in this moment is your shield. Silence isn't avoidance, it's your decision not to participate in a play that once tore you apart. Next, observe. Not their words, but their actions. Not 1 or 2 weeks of sweetness, but consistency over time. Someone who has truly changed will respect the space you need, won't pressure you, and won't use emotion as a tool. They will show change by transforming their own life, not by forcing their way back into yours. Third, ask yourself the real questions. What exactly did they do that hurt you? How long did it take you to heal? What did you promise yourself on the day you finally walked away? Do you honestly want to go through that cycle again, with old hopes and a foundation that's already cracked? Finally, remember this: you don't need a perfect ending with someone from your past in order to begin a new life. Forgiveness doesn't mean going back. Being generous doesn't mean accepting more pain. The fact that you don't reply to their messages, don't answer their calls, don't respond to "I miss you" doesn't mean you're cold. It means you've chosen peace over temporary emotion. Don't forget, every time you protect your boundaries, you grow stronger. Not to prove anything to them, but because you deserve a life free from the manipulation of hands that once made you tremble in the dark. And if one day you see them again, not through a message, but face to face, you won't need to avoid them, nor will you panic. You'll simply smile, because you'll know the truth is clear and you made the right choice. And then, the more distance you keep, the clearer you see they didn't come back to build, they came back to reclaim their old position. Not a place in your heart, but in your mind where they once made you doubt yourself, where they planted guilt every time you tried to set boundaries. They might say things that sound mature: "I just want you to be happy." But just a few days later they ask, "Do you have someone new?" Or "You seem different now." These seemingly caring questions aren't about understanding you, they're about measuring how much power they still hold over you. This is what you must recognize: they're not really listening, they're scouting. Every call, every message, every word of regret, it's all calculated. And if you slip, they'll step right back into their old role, the controller. Gentle on the outside, but underneath the same manipulation wrapped in soft words. But this time you have something you didn't have before: the power to stand with yourself. You don't need to shout to be heard. You only need silence to see clearly. You don't need to beat them. You only need to win over yourself, the part that once wanted to return just because it mourned a version of love that was only an illusion. The truth is, someone who has truly changed doesn't rush to prove it. They live differently. Act differently. Take accountability for the past, and don't try to shortcut their way back with a few emotional messages. A truly remorseful person won't be afraid of your silence. Only someone afraid of losing control panics when you don't reply. And if you still have moments of weakness, that's okay. You're human. You once loved, once trusted, once gave everything. You have the right to miss them, the right to grieve. But you also have the right not to go back. The right to choose yourself, to choose peace, to choose healthy relationships where you don't have to be just enough to be loved. Strength doesn't mean you feel no pain. It means you don't let the pain lead you back to the place where you lost yourself. It's time to shift your gaze away from them and turn it inward, toward yourself. After all the hurt, confusion, and emotional tug of war, you now get to choose something more important than the love you once gave to the wrong person, the choice to care for yourself with kindness and consistency. Because you deserve a life that isn't constantly disrupted by someone who only comes around to test how vulnerable you still are. Instead of wondering whether they'll reach out again, focus on what you need. A healthy body no longer losing sleep over rereading vague messages. A clear mind no longer haunted by the question, have they really changed? A fulfilling life where you are no longer a supporting character in someone else's story. Reset your routine. Move your body gently. Clean your space, not just your house, but your heart. Write down what you're grateful for each day, even the smallest things, a nourishing meal, a good book, a peaceful sleep. These are the things you once overlooked while chasing validation from someone who didn't deserve it. And more than anything, connect with kind people. You don't need many, just a few who are real. You'll be surprised to discover some people show up quietly but offer true safety, a stark contrast to those who once showed up loudly but brought only toxicity. Every day you choose yourself is a day you untangle one more thread from the invisible ropes that once held you back. Every time you ignore a vague message is another declaration to the universe, I know I deserve better. Don't waste another second decoding their behavior. Use that energy to build the strongest, clearest, and most self-respecting version of yourself. Because the truth is, you once lost your way. But now you're coming home, and no one, not even them, can stop you anymore. When a narcissist calls you again after a long silence, it's not a coincidence, it's a calculation. They're not reaching out because they miss you. They're reaching out because they miss the control. What you need to know isn't buried in their words, but in their patterns. And those patterns don't lie. So pause. Breathe. And remember, you've already done the hardest part, walking away. Don't let a moment of nostalgia undo months of healing. You don't owe them a reply. You don't owe them kindness at the cost of your peace. Because true healing isn't about proving you've moved on. It's about no longer needing their validation at all. So when the call comes, and it will ask yourself one question. Do I want to go back to who I used to be, or do I want to protect the person I've become? The answer, as always, lives in your silence. And in your strength to not answer when chaos calls again.